If you've just joined us, you've missed a great interview with John Hartson where he's been talking with Joe about his favourite Champions League memories. Barcelona featured heavily, and Nights at Anfield featured heavily. Great series that the lads are doing on the football show in association with Virgin Media. It's just coming up to 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 30th of April. Oh, and can you believe it? This is the final day of April. What a month we've had. What an amazing month of sporting triumph, tragedy, great games, loads of stuff to look back on. How's it been for you, buddy?
Like you're talking like a pure elite GAA fan, because of course it's been the club month, hasn't it? So you've actually watched no GAA.
Hey, shots fired. Look, it's a very busy programme for us this morning. We're going to be talking about one of the greatest moments in Irish sports history, our debut on the world stage in the World Cup. A country that was, 70 years old at that stage. And we took our first fledgling steps blinking into the light. And from a distance of 30 years, you're going to pour scorn and shit on that team who represented us because you're like a post-ironic, post-history hipster.
Not at all.
Yes.
I will pour scorn on the game and a little bit on the style of football, but not on that team. How can you possibly pour scorn on that Irish team from Italia 90? I mean, people came out in their droves to welcome them home after getting into the top 8 of that tournament. So how can you possibly come back and actually be poisonous about that team? It's just about the game, Ger. We're looking back at Ireland against England from 1990. One of their greatest achievements.
And you're poo-pooing it from the distance of quarantine. Show us your medals.
I'm absolutely poo-pooing the actual game itself, Ireland against England. And there are a number of mitigating factors. There was thunder and lightning in Cagliari that night. There was terrible conditions, a gust of wind. It was like Gibraltar minus the fly plane in the background. That's what Cagliari was like in 1990 when Ireland drew with England. So there are excusable factors, but it doesn't mean that we are going to excuse the spectacle that we decided to watch this week. Nobody forced us to do it, which is the most frustrating thing about this. We voluntarily said, yeah, let's do that game because nostalgia.
It's an important moment in history. Like as I will say later on, and as I will repeat now, sometimes when you are forced to undergo a history lesson, you have to broaden your mind and tune into the nuances of the time and look for the little nuggets of treasure that you will take with you that will last a lifetime in terms of memories.
We found nuggets of treasure. We found Mick McCarthy being the Rory Delap of his era, and we found amazing Eamon Dunphy, we are regurgitating the amazing Eamon Dunphy archive footage as well. So there are nuggets around this game. There just isn't too many in the game.
This is a slice of history almost as good as something that I was going to say that Paul Rice might produce on Off the Ball, but it's not. It really isn't. It's a different type of history lesson where Statler and Waldorf, aka you and Nathan, are like, this is rubbish, and I'm like, no, come on, everybody, just pay attention to the good stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's coming your way after 9 o'clock tonight, Ireland versus England. You can watch that game on Friday night. I would recommend, if you're going to watch the game on Friday night, that you have a few beers beforehand, a bit of pre-drinking going on, as opposed to like just drinking during the match, so that you method act what it was like to watch the game in the first place and
ease the pain.
Exactly.
Come to the product drunk.
But that's not the only TV that we've been watching over the last few days.
Nice segue.
A massive explosion, a global explosion of the sport of Gaelic football. Unfortunately, there is no Gaelic football for people to watch when they go hunting for this now afterwards. So I guess they're going to find stuff on YouTube. But I'm talking about Normal People, which on Hulu has exploded in the States. Washington Post have given it a very favourable review. There's been lots of very positive talk about it in England as well, because it's being shown on BBC. And what they're discovering is that Gaelic football is an important part of the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, not inadvertently, this is actually going to turn out to be one of the best things for Irish tourism this year, because I don't think we quite appreciate just what a genius Lenny Abrahamson is and how good this television show is. Like, it's very easy for us in sport to appreciate the world-class people who have come out of Ireland in terms of the Roy Keanes, for example, when we talk about it in our Mount Rushmores. But I don't think I think in a way, Lenny Abrahamson is actually underrated. And all you got to do is listen to anybody from outside of Ireland talk about this television show and how much they want quarantine to end so that they can actually come to this country. And a step further than that is that it will be a lot of people's first introduction to Gaelic football. And it's pretty good. Like, it's fairly clear that Mescal, the main actor, has played a bit of GAA, and it's pretty clear as well that the choreographing of the GAA scene in episode 1 is fairly off to a T, from the wardrobe to the I would say that the hand passing skills, the kick passing skills, to the classy finish at the end of the scene. It's all wrapped up beautifully, and like, I haven't seen too many international breakdowns of GAA, but I'm sure it's piqued the attention of some people.
So, I mean, you say he's good at football, like Kildare under 21. What are you talking about? This guy's a sensational footballer. The block was the thing that inspired a conversation yesterday. Somebody had asked us to rate this, and I was like, well, it doesn't really matter what we think of it, because Marianne, who's in the crowd, who's watching Connell play football, is pretty excited. It emerges later on. She is pretty excited by what she sees, as she tells him when they're getting into it for the very first time. And so how we view it, not really that important. But actually, it was as good as you've ever seen in terms of Gaelic football being done. One, the block was good. There was a pattern of play that didn't look like a bunch of players in one jersey's running one direction and a bunch of players running in the other direction. So there was like a cinema verite element to this. Looked like a match that they were legitimately playing. The quality of the hand pass looked like, oh, okay, that guy actually, it was like not just a training drill. It was like over somebody's head. It went straight to the chest. It was like, this guy can play a bit of ball. And he drops his shoulder and off he goes. Bang, back of the net.
Well, yeah, well, I think that there's a bit more to it as well. I think that people around the world need to realise that what they're actually watching is a reincarnation of Declan O'Sullivan on the small screen. So he's a wing forward. He's wearing his chain under the Intersport jersey, very secondary school, trying to impress everybody in the stands, but he can do it. He's got the talent to be able to do it. As you say, the give and go technique, absolutely textbook half forward, and they're 2 points down at this point. It is 113 to 111, the scoreline. Gives and goes, gets it back. The wing back chasing him. He manages to keep pace, sure, but he just can't get a hand in. I'm not sure, is he afraid of the greatness of Connell here, or is just in awe of what he is doing, perhaps in awe of the fact that he's actually wearing a chain while playing Gaelic football. Just can't catch him. He races away from the defence, back at the net with the right foot. The goalkeeper, statuesque, kind of takes a step back as it goes past the umpire, who looks like Larry David, cuts to the scoreboard, 211 to 113. They've won the game. And then there's a nice ad for O'Brien Sports, the one-stop sports shop as well, on the scoreboard. It's got it all. It's perfect. It's a great win for St Kilda's, beating their arch rivals Naomh Mahu.
It's sensational. And so after we were asked to review this, I was like, oh, definitely the best thing that we've ever seen. Malky Clerkin chimed in with, yeah, it was. The block was absolutely sensational. And then went on to say, but hang on a second, the goalkeeper actually not that good. Really, that's the one part of this that, and he made the point on Twitter that it looked like it had the bang of a goalkeeper who had saved the shot the first time round and been told, here, listen, this has to go in. This is the winning score. Don't do it again. And Lenny Abrahamson, the joy of Twitter is he's like, actually, that's exactly what happened. He made a stunning save down low to his right. Couldn't believe he saved it. And so the second take is obviously the one that we see where he's not allowed to save it and he's huffing a little bit, going, well, come on. I mean, I would have saved it. Which is stunning.
It's a good story for Paul Mescal to be able to tell in years to come, because he's definitely going to become the most worldwide famous Kildare under 21. No offence to any other Kildare under 21s. Like, this guy's going to become an A-lister around the world. His career is skyrocketing as we speak. He is exploding, and that goalkeeper could have been the one to stop it all for Paul Mescal, but Lenny obviously stopped in and was like, no. We've got a global superstar here. He has to score the goal. There's
a lot of thirst out there for Paul Mescal on all the social media feeds.
I was listening to a Ringer podcast yesterday, and one of the pundits said this guy is on a Brad Pitt trajectory. There is a lot of hype, not just in Ireland, for this
right,
kid.
Okay, which Ringer podcast was it?
It's called... It's called TV Concierge. It's just like a quick 10-minute podcast. Okay. They just do a quick recommendation.
I was wondering if it was like Steve Kerr and
No,
Pete
it wasn't
Carroll.
Steve Kerr or Pete
No.
Carroll, no. But I'm sure that's the next step.
Yeah, okay. So, like, not to bring this all back to OTB AM, but how great does his career have to be before, in 5 years' time, we're going, look, I understand that Ruby Walsh had a great career and it's very difficult to take him off Mount Rushmore, but, like, seriously, Paul Mescal, this is, look at what he's done for the county of Kildare.
Well, it's for the county of Sligo, really. Unfortunately, this television show is going to be great for Dublin, as it is going to be great for Sligo. And that chipper that they go into in episode 2 will be flocked with people once lockdown ends. They're bypassing Kildare. Paul Mescal hasn't even done a good thing for Kildare. You're probably going to be the only person who remembered. He played for Kildare years down the line.
Oh,
While Sligo
no.
and Dublin will be laughing in and of course other Kildare people. But
Exhibit A, Larry Tompkins. Kildare's Larry Tompkins. And Exhibit B, Shay Fahy, that we still bang on about 30 years later. Like, just wouldn't have won those if it wasn't for us at all. Right. Porrick Dillon wants to know, hi lads, just wondering what show, movie you're talking about. Sounds very interesting.
Well done for establishing that at the top of the show, Ger. We're talking about normal people. It's on RTE Player. That's the legal way to get it. But you only have to get 2 episodes a week.
Yeah, if you have the BBC Player, you can watch the whole thing. If anybody can hook me up with how to get the BBC Player in Ireland, I'd be much obliged. Does anybody know how to do this? Does anybody? No, blank stares. You know how to do it?
I play by the book, Ger. Play by the book. I still I still watch DVDs only.
Oh, and the point of being able to patronise me in situations like this is that you're supposed to take them.
It's called a VPN. I'll explain it to you.
But how do I put a VPN on my TV? That's I've got
to. They need to just invent some software where you can actually cast stuff from your laptop to your television. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I can cast it from my phone. I find it difficult to cast it from my laptop because it doesn't work. It doesn't get picked up on the TV. I have to plug it in. Like it's a HDMI cable. Look, it's a HDMI cable. You need to get
yourself a Chromecast or an Apple TV, one or the other, and then you'll be able to VPN all you want on your television. Of course, we don't recommend that. I'm not even sure. Is it properly illegal? Probably is.
No, it's not. It's totally fine.
No?
I mean,
is it? Okay.
Hey,
right.
look. Why shouldn't we be able to leech off the BBC? All the stuff that country has done to our country over 800 years, the least we can do is to be able to stream normal people when we want it, right?
Well,
that's a fair trade-off, isn't it?
In all seriousness,
six counties for the BBC.
I completely agree. Like the BBC iPlayer being geo-blocked is a stain on our relationship with Britain. I thought we'd move past this sort of begrudgery, and barriers are being broken down during coronavirus, figuratively, because they're actually literally being put up in a practical sense. But figuratively, paywalls have been broken down and free things have been given out. The geo-block on the BBC iPlayer, I cannot believe it's still standing during these challenging times. Drop the paywall, BBC. Let us watch this GAA star in full flight for 10 episodes, please.
Unite our country, BBC. This is your opportunity to take a giant step forward in our relationships in these islands. Unite our country. Release the geo-block. You've started a campaign. I like it.
If this doesn't happen, we will have to rewatch reruns of Jason Statham beating the shit out of guys with a hurley. That is the only GAA content we really have in worldwide cinema. And if I have to rewatch that anymore, I might lose my mind. So please, just give us this.
Given how important the plot point has been so far, do you think there might be more games, or is one enough? Is this?
No, they're going to Trinity. They're absolutely that would be it's an Irish author
in Trinity. Wash your mouth out. There is GAA in Trinity. I'm telling you.
It's an Irish author. It's an Irish director. They realise that there is no GAA in Trinity. If it was an American production, and they were like, right, the person goes to Dublin and they get better at Gaelic football, then we'd know that it wasn't authentic. Sally Rooney and Lenny Abrahamson both know that GAA does not exist within those 4 walls. So sorry to break it to you, but it's one and done in terms of Paul Mescal's GAA on-screen career. 087
180 180 is the number to WhatsApp us, and if anybody finds any sign of intelligent life around GAA in Trinity, then let Eoin know, because some of us are aware of the fact of its existence. Dating all the way back to 1995, actually, was the first time that it ever happened. Talking about classic game club, Phil Egan says, I was in the Jacks when Sheedy scored against England, so I was sent to the toilet when we were 1-0 down to the Dutch, and it worked again, but I had nothing left for the Italy game. Nathan Murphy says, I watched back the Republic of Ireland versus England for the Classic Game Club. It turned out to be the toughest 90 minutes of lockdown so far. This is a gross exaggeration. And look, here's the thing. Maybe you don't want to watch the game. You got to listen to this because this is actually a bit more entertaining than the game, I promise you. So here's what's coming up on the show this morning. John Hartson, we've obviously had sports pages coming your way right now. We're going to talk about drug testing within the GAA and how it might compare or contrast with the AFL. Obviously a very different situation with the AFL being professional, but Mickey Quinn has experience of both of those, and he'll join us around about 8:30 this morning. Graham Hunter coming your way at around about 10 to 9. I talked to him about the career of Michael Robinson and some of the other news that's coming from Spain at the moment in terms of their Project Restart or the equivalent. And then Classic Game Club, as we've been telling you about, is all Italia 90 based. England and Ireland, a 1-1 draw. Gary Lineker shitting on the pitch. Who doesn't want to hear us talk for 10 minutes about that incident? I mean, I think that this is the content that you pay so much for when you sign up to Off the Ball. Right, time for the papers.
OTB AM.
We are indeed going to start with offtheball.com, and the lead story this morning is that the former Leeds defender Trevor Cherry has died, aged 72. No doubt that'll come up on Thursday Night Football with John Giles on the radio this evening. Stephen O'Brien, Buckley's Kerry exit, finishing leagues, playing with no crowd. Stephen O'Brien did a bit of media yesterday, so we talked to him about Donny Buckley and what it might be like finishing the leagues, hopefully at some point in 2020 with no crowd. And then Anthony Davis, who was the independent judicial officer in charge of the Cronin case, was on the show last night for a good half hour, getting into the nitty-gritty of the details of that case and also how these cases work generally. So if that is in your wheelhouse, then a very educational piece last night as well. And then German officials to present official plan for Bundesliga return is the story there. And again, Niall Moynihan was on talking about doping in the GAA. Ultimately, the buck has to stop with the player. It's true, but certainly there is questions being raised about the efficiency of the education programme and who actually ends up with responsibility for running that education programme. And I'm sure that's going to become a topic of conversation over the next few days, as finally Sport Ireland will confirm that a GAA player has been banned for 4 years, and then you'll see statements from the GAA, and I think this will be a topic of conversation over the coming weeks and days. What have you got for us on?
The Irish Independent this morning leads with a photograph of Mia Whelan O'Connor from the ESB Swimming Club practicing her craft in her back garden in Inchicore using an inflatable pool. There could have been an idea for you, Ger, for your swim for a mile. Top 2 United on FAI's plans to explore closed doors options. Meanwhile, this is Vinnie Perth and Stephen Bradley, both happy that the idea of behind closed doors football is being considered. They are obviously quite cautious about it and the practicality of making it happen. And then the GPA says players will not be allowed to put themselves at risk. They've been out yesterday saying that a return to play needs to be fully safe for their players to actually take to the pitch. A couple of other stories then from the Independent this morning. Neil Francis, they might call the tune, but sponsors don't always get it right. Banner's prodigal son Cunningham back on the beat, and Cheltenham should not have taken place, admits HRI chief.
And that's the lead story on the Irish Times as well. So Brian Kavanagh had done an interview with the Sport for Business podcast hosted by Rob Hartnett, and he was saying, look, it should have happened behind closed doors and maybe shouldn't have happened at all. So that's Brian Kavanagh of Horse Racing Ireland saying that. And then O'Brien backs drug testing regime for players. This is the Stephen O'Brien story. Pitch perfect as Croke Park gets a little rest and recuperation. Plans for resurfacing could be put on hold due to lack of action. So I think the pitch gets resurfaced on a semi-regular basis after every couple of years, and maybe they don't need to do it as quickly as they would have done otherwise. There may be no further matches this year, GPA. So that's one of the takeaways from the GPA, who had a communication yesterday with all the players. It's our view that this current period should be used as downtime with a break from inter-county commitments. Feedback from squad indicates that a lot of management teams are taking this approach, and we welcome this move. We'll continue to give updates as the situation develops. There are no answers as of yet, but when we have further clarity, we will provide it. There remains the genuine possibility that we will not see any return to action this year. However, we hope the situation will change in the coming months, but public health advice will be the guiding principle. That's that story there. And so there's definitely a row brewing between the leagues and FIFA and their chief medical officer, which we'll get to with a brilliant headline in one of the papers there. Restart of leagues definitely possible, says Meyer. So this is UEFA's chief medical official, Tim Meyer, saying clubs can plan the restart of competitions, which is a little bit different from what FIFA was saying yesterday.
The London Times this morning leads with the story that doping chiefs finally get FARA's data. So this has been a bit of a tug of war between UK Athletics and UK anti-doping. Details about Mo Farah's medical data, which was not fully shared between the organisations previously, has finally now been shared. Of course, there was a big push to get this after the Salazar ban last September, and the data wasn't forthcoming. Of course, there's no suggestion that there's been any wrongdoing by Farah, but there has, of course, been a bit of difficulty getting that data. So they will begin to analyse that. Mourinho's special delivery is the main photograph on the back of the London Times. He's carrying fresh food from the club's kitchen garden at their training ground to the local community. And police-backed neutral venue restart plan. The Premier League should give serious consideration to completing the season at neutral venues to minimise the impact on emergency services. So that would be, I presume, due to the fact that not a lot of fans would just rock on up to the ground and cause a ruckus and avoid social distancing if the games were to take place in their own back garden.
The Irish Examiner this morning, a couple of different angles from them. Train for your well-being rather than a far-off championship, players told. And then the Stephen O'Brien story that they've gone for is players are used to closed-door games, and he makes the point that most of the challenge matches that we've played over the last number of years have been behind closed doors in pitches around the country. So when you think about it, like, that makes perfect sense. A lot of controversy behind those games, sometimes when players end up in hospital having battered the heads off each other. And but at least they're used to it, so it's not going to be this completely alien concept. No,
it won't. And I think Peter Keane was making the same point over the course of the weekend as well, that the training games are ferocious. They take place behind closed doors. That's the way it is. Like, are we really going to just postpone an entire year, cancel an entire year because the atmosphere is different?
No, we're not. The reason to do it is for public health, but like, you know, even listening to Sam McConkey yesterday, he expects there to be at some point down the line new information came to light. You know, the dude and Sam McConkey together at last, everybody needed that. I just think that there's a chance for us not to make decisions now that in 4 months' time we're like, well, actually, we could have played 8 rounds of championship, got something done. We could have started it this year. We could have had a fair few club matches done. We could have had club league happening at the same time as the intercounty championship, and then played club championship immediately after that. Like, there's definitely there's scenario planning that you hope is happening at the moment too. So,
but like, are we going to make the most of the GAA taking its first tentative steps back to social distancing training? Like, should there be a GAA version of horse organised, where like obviously in the NBA they managed to do it from people's back gardens? When people are back in social distancing, could there be some sort of five-a-side skill challenge organised between counties as some sort of tiebreaker? Could you play off the first round of the championship with a remote and social distanced skill challenge, I wonder?
Could you have the Morris Fitz sideline challenge, where like there's an age grouped, so the 20-25 sideline challenge, you couldn't you? This would actually be decent.
And Morris Fitz himself could probably take part.
Well, that's I mean, ultimately he's going to win it. You put the Masters against the kids, and there's a final in Croker. They do it over 5 days. I mean, look, you know, we're scrabbling around here for something, but maybe we've discovered something on.
It's we should have had this conversation off air and sold it. Sean O'Shea would win that competition. Wasn't there someone else recently who regular?
Clifford
did it. Well, Clifford did it. In fairness, he did it in a different video, and that was actually from the corner, literally the corner flag, which is actually tougher. But Sean O'Shea had done it in a couple of games. But there was obviously another player from a different county recently. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. Was it Shane Walsh, maybe?
I think Shane Walsh in my head as well. I would have said that. I mean, I could be wrong, but
he did it in game, of course. Like, I mean, I'm sure Dean Rock would knock one of those over as well. From the right side, it was from the left, wasn't it, in the drawn game last year? The thing is, the Morris Fitz thing, the level has over the last 23 years has obviously got to such a high standard that you'd almost have to see, can you do Morris Fitz 3 times in a row, for example,
to equal Morris Fitz?
Yeah, like I think that it's much more in the range. For example, people are more powerful nowadays, so the range is definitely there. Yeah, it's easier nowadays, isn't it? Like, I think it's just the GA has gone to a different level.
Yeah, It has, of course it has. All sorts of things have improved. So what's next?
The London Independent this morning, fighting talk is the main headline here, with a photograph there of Josh Warrington, who's opened up on his rivalry with Shakur Stevenson. Moeen lends backing to postpone 100 meanwhile. He's endorsed postponing the 100 this year, reasoning that England and Wales's cricket board's flagship competition is too important to be diluted. And FIFA explore restart options, writes Miguel Delaney. England's September Nations League games, 08 to Iceland and Denmark, are almost certain to be postponed. So that, of course, goes for Ireland as well in terms of our Nations League fixtures.
The Herald have a two-page spread about Wayne McCullough. Wayne's death duel left fans relieved at final bell. This is, I think it was part of their series of, Dublin's greatest sporting occasions. Number 7, McCullough versus Bueno, 1996. So Wayne McCullough's face is swollen really badly at the end of this fight. It's a fight he wins, and apparently he remembered almost nothing of the fight the next day. I'm pretty sure he broke a cheekbone in it. That's why, certainly there was nerve damage in the face, if memory serves correctly. But they absolutely killed each other in the ring, metaphorically, and his blood pressure was dangerously high. His eardrum was burst. The doctor said his body was in shock, and so that was the last time he boxed at bantamweight. So making the weight was obviously a big issue for him, and he kept his world title. But it was one of those victories that you kind of feel like ultimately, I don't know, Wayne McCullough goes on to fight again and again and again and be in some very high profile fights after that. So it wasn't so much a turning point in his career as the end of his career at that weight. But that's certainly worth digging into. It's in the Herald today.
The Mirror this morning goes with Gary Neville's comments. Your money or your life. Neville, restarting the season now is all about economics, but how many players have to die before the idea becomes unpalatable? So that's his tone on restarting football. BAME stars, meanwhile, fear they face extra risk in rush to finish campaign, writes Darren Lewis, who's touched on the ethnicity of a lot of patients being treated in intensive care, which is, again, another angle which I hadn't really seen on this. Tune offer Pochettino £19 million a year. Newcastle's prospective new owners are ready to make Maurizio Pochettino the world's third highest paid boss with a whopping £19 million per year deal. Incredible figure it's being thrown around there. And GPA says no games until there's absolutely no risk to players.
The back page of the Irish Sun this morning, kicking the ballots. 800 out-of-contract players to vote if they'll play beyond June. So, and they've got the picture of Mourinho in the garden as well. It's funny there was a photographer there, isn't it? At the same time that Jose happened to be picking up some vegetable for veg for people who need it. It's fairly lucky for him that this photograph got out there, isn't it? I mean,
well, in fairness, it's you give a little, you take a little, and there was obviously conveniently a photographer there when he was flouting social distancing rules a couple of weeks back. So if there's going to be a photographer there when you're at your worst, then there should be a photographer there when you're at your best.
Could Jose Mourinho have a Keeping Up with the Kardashians style TV show?
Yes, absolutely. Great shout. What's his entourage like?
He definitely is somebody who is good on TV. Like, every time you watch him, you're like, oh, that's Mourinho on TV, I'm going to watch this. Even when it's a 13-minute monologue answer to one Jeff Shreve's question, you're like, this is kind of getting boring now, but like, it's Mourinho and I can't turn off. It's a bit car crash. Ooh, he said something, and, the 12th minute in, you're like, oh, that justified me. This wasn't one of those 70-second videos on Twitter that I'm like, why did I watch that full 70 seconds? Give me my time back. So the fate of the Football League season could hinge on a key vote by players about whether they work beyond their contract dates. So this is obviously the lower league in the EFL. And, it's a very difficult scenario here because Players Union have confirmed that there is only severance money on offer and no extra wages. And so therefore players will not agree until they're actually offered money to play. But, the league teams are asking them to play for free after their time runs out, which all of a sudden means that the team that started the season and the team that finished the season are going to be completely different. So UEFA furious over Belgium's waffle. See what they did there? European League's boss Lars Christer Olsen slammed Belgian Michel Doug for insisting the season must be cancelled. So Doug's the FIFA medical officer, and he said the football should not return before September, even behind closed doors. But Olsen has told him to shut up, while UEFA's own medical professor said restarting the season is definitely possible. So a little bit of a fissure there.
Right. If he obviously kind of agrees with what he's saying, then the headline tomorrow has to be the Doug abides.
Hey, yeah, I'll take that. Well done. Next.
The Irish Daily Star, I thought you were going on. The Irish Daily Star this morning is €22 million per year. Saudis plan to lure Poch with world's third highest salary for a manager. HRI chief says Cheltenham should have been behind closed doors, while GAA insists refund always on the cards. So this is a story we mentioned yesterday. GAA chiefs insisting they've always intended to offer a refund to 2020 season ticket holders if this year's league and championship is not completed. So season ticket holders were yesterday sent an email which said, I clearly don't check my emails, which said either a refund on the 2020 ticket or a discount on next year's ticket would be available if the league or championship are not played off, which is fair enough, obviously. And Gary says cash only block. Gary Neville has claimed only money is preventing the cancellation of English football this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true. Loads of people will lose their jobs if they cancel the season, and that industry might never restart. Some of those clubs might just disappear if that happens. This is a point Miguel made last week on, was it on Monday, on the show, that there's it looks like it's just greed, but actually it isn't. It isn't just greed. It's like a massive industry that supports loads of other ancillary industries. Yeah, and so if we can save those livelihoods, we're staring down the barrel of a depression. None of us have lived through a depression, and depressions have massive repercussions. The last time there was a depression, it was kind of the beginnings of a giant global conflict. So we're trying to avoid that in any way that we possibly can. And if football has some role in saving 20,000 jobs or 30,000 jobs or 100,000 jobs across England and beyond, then shouldn't they try and do that?
100%. If there is an ability to save an industry here, and all the employees that go with football clubs, for example, without question, it isn't just to do with that. There is also the more grey area. We can't put a number on how many people's enjoyment of day-to-day life would actually be improved by having football to watch or football to look forward to at the weekend, or it is the central point for a lot of people's lives, and that is certainly the case in the UK as well. If the option is there to do it and it is safe to do so, there's no question that they should be trying to press on with some form of a return to play. And as you said, the most important thing is that their jobs will be lost, and jobs are already being affected at the moment.
Which won't come back, that's the thing. So the Telegraph, a lot of interesting stories here. United Health warning over big return. That's huge uncertainty around season amidst Woodward, Old Trafford clear to test safe standing for 1,500 fans. So safe standing has been something that they've been talking about for a long time, but now actually might make far more sense. Rip out the seats. You might be able to have a sizable amount of people being able to go to grounds and to social distance at the same time. So the RNA's plans to allow amateur golfers to play next month. This is a James Corrigan story, which I think is in line with the public health advice that we've been hearing from Luke O'Neill and Sam McConkey on the programme. End season if fans gather at grounds for matches, say police. So this would be the scenario that we saw before, when fans were outside the ground and you could hear them. They were so loud. There were obviously so many of them. You could hear them on the TV broadcast. It was, I think, Paris Saint-Germain game in particular. And the UK police are saying that you'd have to end the season if that was happening. I mean, yeah, I think that's a fairly straightforward thing. Threatening to end the season seems like, well, couldn't it be policed? Isn't there a way to police this and to stop people from dispersed from congregating, water cannons rather than end the season? But anyway. And then the other one is experts call for grassroots to lead the resumption of sport, which I think is kind of how the conversation has gone here about putting club matches back before you put the inter-county matches back. So all of that seems to make sense.
The Guardian, finally, for me this morning, leads with this interview by Donald McRae done with Andy Cole. Some days are a total blur, he says, legend Cole, on his depression in self-isolation. It's a fairly harrowing read. So 18 months ago, McRae also interviewed Cole, and he described the psychological and physical aftermath of his kidney transplant in searing detail. His battle has now been intensified by COVID-19, to say the least. Just a couple of lines from Cole in this, that the past 5 years have been a shitstorm. When I met you in October 2018, the biggest shitstorm was just starting. It certainly got worse. It certainly did. He says, I'm still here. That's the most important things. But he says, there are many, many times when I just want to give up, period. Not just on life, they'll give up on everything. It becomes so difficult. I was struggling last Wednesday. It totally came out of the blue, and I had to stay in bed. I conceded defeat and accepted that today's not going to be my day. Previously, I would fight, but ultimately, I know I can't beat it. So it's great stuff with Andy Cole there this morning by Donald McRae in The Guardian. And then you've also got that cricket story about the 100 and Moeen Ali. And then also a couple of other stories mentioned on the back page. Cheltenham Festival should probably not have taken place, says top executive. And Project Restart analysis, is the Premier League's project really viable, asks the football writers in The Guardian.
That Andy Cole interview is really good. He talks about after his kidney transplant, looking at his own body and hating it, and then going to meetings and realising that was a fairly common response from people who have transplants. So if you get a chance to dig that out today, then you should. Just to tell you about some of the quick stories that are happening around the sports world at the moment. The Gaelic Players Association say that the health and safety of their members won't be risked as they come to terms with the new realities, and the organisation's chief executive Paul Flynn has acknowledged there is a genuine possibility there will be no return to action in 2020. Kerry footballer Stephen O'Brien is open to the prospect of playing matches behind closed doors if the environment allows.
Like, from a player's perspective, once the ball's thrown in, you don't really, it doesn't bother you too much. Now, I don't know, is it feasible to play games behind closed doors? I mean, look, it's gonna, for the people that can't go to the match to see it in person, you know, it's gonna be a huge thing. So, as a player, I'd be okay with it, but I don't know, is it feasible?
Government producing a clear roadmap in terms of how businesses are going to emerge from this lockdown.
Sligo Rovers say the behind closed doors guidelines presented to clubs are cost prohibitive. A 40-page document outlined how clubs may conduct games when football is allowed to resume in the country. The Sligo chairman Tommy Higgins has described the measures as impractical. Higgins has also apparently poured cold water on Niall Quinn's idea of streaming games as a means of generating revenue. But Dan McDonald has Vinnie Perth saying that these ideas need to be explored, and we shouldn't be knocking them on the head just yet. In rugby, the French top 14 season is set to be cancelled today. French media reports that only Racing and Lyon still need convincing about drawing the season to an early close. On Tuesday, the French Prime Minister extended the ban on team sports until the 1st of September, and club presidents are set to meet with the French Sports Minister today with a final decision due afterwards. A quick reminder about our OTB Kids Takeover. This is where we hand over the airwaves to the children of Ireland and set them loose on some of our biggest sporting stars. The first one we did was Brian O'Driscoll, then we had Lee Keegan, and this week we have Simon Zebo. To leave a question for Simon, make it as outrageous as you possibly can. 087 918 180 is the number. Send us a message, a voice note. Better still, do it on video and shoot the video in landscape mode. So turn it around sideways and we'll put the questions to him. Mickey Quinn is up next. First though, here is Niall Moyna talking about drug testing in the GAA. Have a look.